This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler warning.
Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host tonight, and with me I have just one, but not just one very special Infinity Bro, Zane Ellis.
Hello. Thank you for having me on my podcast.
Your podcast, wow. This is Zane's podcast?
It's a collective group.
You're right. It is.
It's a collective group. I'm part of that.
It's going to be a classic Isaac and Zane mess around this episode.
best.
So everybody who doesn't want that can go ahead and just check out right now. Everybody who, I'm assuming everybody wants in on this, keep listening because buckle up. It's about to get wild. We're going to talk about a lot of things, including Boba Fett. Episodes 1 and 2 just dropped on Disney Plus the past couple weeks. And we're going to get some old segments back. We're going to get some hot and snot, and we're going to do our first official top 6 segment, switching that up a little bit since we decided to kind of go a different direction. New year, new Infinity Bros. We're doing top 6s now instead of top 5s. So, Zane, what's going on with you in 2022, man? How's the new year treating you?
I mean, so far so good. Like, I'm still here, still alive. I mean, we're only 8 days in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, still a lot of time to see if we'll survive 2022. But
there's still so much time for shenanigans.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
People don't even know.
Absolutely. There's going to be so many shenanigans that we're getting into this year. As most of you know, we actually just celebrated our 100th episode as a podcast, the Infinity Bros podcast. And man, that was just a really cool, special thing. We broadcasted it live on Twitch. It is now live on YouTube, and you can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. But we ranked our 2021 Stan Lee Awards, our favorite TV shows, movies, and Infinity Gems of 2021. So make sure you go check that out to kind of get our 2021 recap. And this episode is our first official episode of 2022. So we're looking ahead, big things in store for the Infinity Bros. We're going to keep churning out content. As of right now, right this second, Zane, we have streamed, I think, 7 out of the 8 days in 2022.
I was gonna say we have started out strong on the streaming. It has been clutch.
Yeah, we are stepping up our game on Twitch. If you are a fan of video games, you can check out our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/the_infinity_bros. We stream a variety of games, a wide variety, since 4 of us are streaming now. Max, Infinity Bro Max just picked up streaming, which, I mean, if you had a bingo card for 2022, Max starting to stream would probably not be on my bingo card at all.
It wasn't on mine.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's we got wild things happening at the Infinity Bros right now. So, I don't know, maybe Zane will be streaming next. So, who knows? Anything can happen in 2022. So,
we'll see. Time will tell.
So welcome to the Infinity Bros. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. You can check out the Infinity Bros at theinfinitybros.com, any podcast platform, or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Lots of ways you can get connected with us. You can join our Discord for daily discussion on anything that's going on, including up-to-date shows like Boba Fett. Boba Fett just dropped, Zane, it caught the end of 2020, the first episode did. And then is going to be releasing weekly on Wednesdays on Disney Plus. And this show kind of, I don't know, I feel like early on, this show came as kind of a shock to Star Wars fans because it's basically replacing The Mandalorian as of right now. Like, there's no, new Mandalorian season for 2021/2022. Instead, we're getting Boba Fett. So I think a few people were shocked at that. What were your thoughts about that when they announced that we were getting this instead of The Mandalorian this year?
I think it's one of those things that the Star Wars universe is big enough that there's a ton of stories to tell, and you don't necessarily need to become hyper focused on just certain characters. Like, yeah, Boba Fett goes back, years and has very much a different following and is a loved character by many, but like it hasn't really ever had anything that's been fully fleshed out before. And so, yeah, obviously the Mandalorian's a brand new character as well, but with Boba Fett, like, this is kind of a long-standing character we've had that hasn't had that opportunity in the spotlight. Like, we've had plenty with everything with the Skywalkers and the Emperor and, all the main stuff. Like, it's nice to see a little bit of a branch out that let's see some other stuff from some of these characters. Because, I mean, even you go back into, like, Clone Wars. Like, there wasn't even a ton of Boba Fett in, like, the Clone Wars. There wasn't much from, like, Bad Batch. Like, he really hasn't
Honestly, surprisingly, because I feel like, they started a story arc with him and then just kind of left him after that. Like, they never went back to it, which I was kind of surprised about.
Supposedly, it was supposed to be get more focus in, like, the Season 7 that got canceled.
Oh, interesting.
It was supposed to focus more on Boba Fett. Well, that ended up never happening. And yeah, so those arcs just kind of ended up dying out. And it's like, well, would have loved to see more for that. So yeah, I'd love to get more of the adventures of Boba Fett when he was younger. But like, I will settle on what we have now too, because it's cool to see.
Absolutely. So this. We've got Tamira Morrison coming back as Boba Fett from, his appearance in The Mandalorian, and Ming-Na Wen coming back as Fennec Shand, who also appeared in The Mandalorian, which, honestly, wild stuff. Like, Star Wars universe is doing some craziness because Fennec Shand appeared in, I believe, the last season of Clone Wars. No. She did appear in it, but she wasn't like... Now I'm trying to keep this straight. No, I think she was only in the Bad Batch. She was in the Bad Batch for sure, which is the animated show
for sure in the Bad Batch
that came out this year. I'm trying to remember if she made an. I don't think she did make an appearance because I think her first appearance was in The Mandalorian last year. Well, correct me if we're wrong, listeners, but the fact that they're bringing these characters from live action and intertwining them into their animated shows, fantastic. They're doing some amazing stuff with the Star Wars universe. And for all of the, I think, Zane, I don't think Bad Batch made your list either for TV shows of 2021. I think Jarrett is the only one that put it on his list, but it was definitely in my honorable mentions. Like, this is a great show. If you guys don't have Disney Plus, make sure you get, like, I don't even know if they have free trials for Disney Plus, honestly, but make sure you somehow get around to watching this show if you enjoy Star Wars content, because as far as spin-offs go, it's a fantastic spin-off. It's a great animated show. They do a lot of awesome character building and different things than you would really expect from, the Clone Wars type of stuff. So great animated show. But Ming-Na Wen is fantastic as Fennec Shand, and her and Tamira Morrison are the basis of this Book of Boba Fett show that we're diving into. So we're basically going to be reviewing these first two episodes here. Episode 1, holy crap, we get slapped in the face with a bunch of Star Wars lore. Just like they go right into it. I kind of wondered before the season how they were going to play this, right? Saying like, are they going to revisit Boba Fett's past? Like, we all kind of know that he survived the Sarlacc, obviously, but are they going to go back to that? Are they just going to keep going, plowing ahead into the future? Like, how are they going to handle this? And they, like, no holds barred. They're like, all right, let's just let's just show everybody a recap of what's been happening in Boba Fett's life, basically in episode 1, which was fantastic. They showed us like, I know you've seen it already, Zane, but so for those of you guys, we are fans of both The Office and Parks and Rec, the TV shows on this show. In Parks and Rec, they have this fantastic character played by, gosh, what's his name again? I'm blanking on the actor's name that plays him, but he literally lays out. He's like, there's this scene.
Oh yeah, Patton Oswalt.
Yeah, Patton Oswalt. He
when he's the town.
Yes,
folk.
he's the town folk,
and he's doing the filibuster.
He's filibustering this town meeting so they can't get anything done, and he literally lays out this screenplay for like, I don't even. It's a movie. I think he's doing a movie or something like that, but he's like describing the scene of how Boba Fett survives, and it's wild. Like, I'm sure the creators of Book of Boba Fett, like, honestly referenced this. Like, they took this shot for shot. Everything he references is like in the scene where he survives the Sarlacc pit, which is just absolutely wild and complete gold. If you guys haven't watched Parks and Rec, you need to go do that right now. Like, fantastic show. But Patton Oswalt is a gem in the nerd and just comedy communities. Like, dude's a beast, and it was so funny. Like, if I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen on TikTok, they like lined up his speech with the actual shots from Book of Boba Fett, and he like exactly how he describes it. He pokes his like gauntlet out of the sand and like, comes up. Fantastic. Make sure you go check that out. But like, man, they just dove right into it. Did you like how they just like nothing? They didn't even really give any context. They're just like dove right into his past.
I'm fine with it because I was like, I don't really need more context to that. Like, I mean, you kind of had the introduction, what you had from The Mandalorian. So obviously you're coming into this knowing, oh, it's the Book of Boba Fett. But it kind of already starts off that footing of like, all right, we're going to go with what Boba Fett's adventure is right now. And so it's like, I don't need a ton of exposition or what's from the past. And it's like, if you go back then and start just to watch this, like, it doesn't miss the beat of what you're watching from The Mandalorian. So like, you could burn through the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, or, or even, wait a second, is he just in the first season of Mandalorian? Or
no, he's only in season 2.
He's only in season 2. So like, you could just burn through, watch season 2, and then right to this, just start with Book of Boba Fett. Like, there's no, like, the universe stays rolling from where it is. Like, you don't have to like play catch up. It's not, which I can understand how some people having to go back, like when they released, the season 6 of like the Clone Wars, like it feels like you're having to go back to a story that's already happened.
Because it had been like 10 years since they had, released, seasons.
And it was still very cool, and it was something like the fans wanted. But like this, it's none of that. It's not like you got to run back and like, oh, you got to watch this movie to understand this. Like, it's like, nope, here's the present. Here's what the story we're going. We're just running with this. And we're going to give you enough the context to be like, hey, here's probably more of like the little nuggets that like the fans want to see. Like, hey, him escaping, him, like, how did this establish for this? Like those little tidbits, but it's not going to bog down the story with that, because it's more of like, hey, we're taking this adventure from where it's at and moving forward. Even though there is one thing I hope they get to, because it's a non-canon thing, but it's so much more story behind it. But if they go the non-canon route of explaining how Boba Fett gets the dent in his helmet,
yes, that would
if
be
they
sick.
stick with that, if they stick with the story that was written, that would be the coolest thing ever. Because, like, if for those that like don't know, like, I guess not really a spoiler because it's not even canon, but the story is him and Cad Bane getting a duel.
Oh
and they
my gosh.
shoot each other at the same time.
Dude, okay,
like,
you know how they reveal that too? Cad Bane shows up and they like have a face off and like, oh wow, haven't seen you in a long time, like type of thing. Like, oh,
If Cad Bane shows
Man.
up at like the end of Book of Boba
Oh my
Fett, I will
gosh.
freak out.
Oh, that would be
I
fantastic.
love Cad
Like,
Bane. He is one of my all-time favorite
Same.
Clone Wars characters.
Same. Like, I think he's probably on my top 5, at least top 10 for sure, top 5 list of Star Wars characters of all time. Like, I want to see
Hands
Cad
down.
Bane in live action so bad. That would be amazing.
The big floppy hat, the way he talks, just the way he's just so cool and chill
just
about
so
everything.
badass. Like, dude.
Just like going toe to toe with Obi-Wan, just not even worried about it. Like, this dude is cool. Like,
bounty hunters, you don't think of them as like fearless. Like, that's not really an adjective you would use to describe bounty hunters. Like, they kind of just want to get their money, and that's kind of the bottom line. If it comes down to they're in danger of losing their lives, I feel like most bounty hunters probably just like check out. But like, you're right, he stares down Obi-Wan. Like, everybody he comes into contact with, dude has a legit showdown with, because he has no fear.
well, not that, but like his whole character is personified and based on like that Old West gunslinger.
Right,
And I think that's
exactly.
what makes him so cool. Of like, I'm gonna look you in the eyes as I take you out. Like, it's just that cool. Like, yeah, you're like, oh, he's a bad guy, but like, that guy's cool. Like, you look at it and you're just like, this guy's legit.
So awesome. So yeah, absolutely would. Please give us Cad Bane in this season. That would be amazing. And man, like, they've been doing this in Mandalorian a little bit too, but I feel like this season specifically, they're really playing on the fan service and nostalgia, the lore in Star Wars. Like, I feel like they're using this season to really highlight that stuff. Mandalorian, they kind of got away from that a little bit because they wanted it to be kind of its own thing, like start a new chapter in Star Wars like lore. And this one, I feel like they're gonna full play into it. Like, and we'll go into how they're doing that already in 2 episodes in. But so at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, we get a post-credit scene. Boba Fett goes into Jabba the Hutt's palace, kills Bib Fortuna, takes over control of his empire, his crime empire. And that's honestly, this is my only complaint of the show so far. I have no real idea of where the direction of this show is going. Like, as far as we know, the plot of the show is Boba trying to regain control of like the Hutt empire that he now is in control of. And I feel like, I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, so there's a lot of time for them to develop that. But like, I feel like it's a little like wishy-washy. Like, what is the real plot of the show right now? Like, I'm kind of a little bit lost in that. But because there's so much fan service and so much lore, I don't care at this point.
Right.
They're doing a great job of playing on the nostalgia and the lore of Star Wars fans all over the world. So we get him, Fennec Shan. They go back. Episode 1, they kind of basically get acquainted with the people in the area. The mayor sends a delegate who kind of honestly disrespects him a little bit and doesn't give him a tribute. He's like not really thinking that Boba probably is going to retain control of this Hutt empire. So he doesn't really do anything. He kind of expects a tribute from him. And Boba's like a little peeved at that, as he should be. Yeah, and then again, so we get Boba multiple times throughout this episode, goes into this tank where he's healing, he calls it, and that's where he get these flashbacks. And I think that's a really great way to kind of introduce the past of what's happening. I really, really, really hope that they don't just play this off as like just a way to show us Boba's past. I hope the tank plays some role in this somehow. Like the nightmares that they say are going on with him. Like, I hope this isn't just like literally a way to show us the past. I hope this somehow plays a role in the plot, because I feel like it's a little bit of a cheap way to show us that. Sure, it's better than just like cutting back and showing us the past, but I feel like why introduce it if it's not going to be important down the line? That's another kind of thought I had through these first couple episodes. Like, I really do hope that it plays a part down the line. But he gets in these back to tank. He has these nightmares where he shows us the past. And in the past, obviously, we've already talked about, we see the scene where he escapes the Sarlacc pit. That was sick. So he wakes up in the Sarlacc pit, right? Like, he goes over to this stormtrooper who is also in the Sarlacc pit, uses his oxygen from his suit to survive a little bit, and then somehow digs himself out. They don't really show that part of it, but like, Zane, thoughts on this whole scene where he escapes the Sarlacc pit? Like, was it everything you wanted as a Star Wars fan?
Well, it was just like everyone for so long, it just hypothesized. It was just like, oh,
right,
how does Boba Fett get out?
Right.
So like you knew it was one of those scenes you knew you were gonna get, but it was one of those things that was just like it was almost like no matter what they showed, you were gonna be happy with it because you're like, yes, this is happening. It's finally on the screen. It's finally canon. So it's just like it didn't really matter. And then you're leaving out the best part of that is not only does he go to that trooper, get the oxygen, but then he shoves his hand through part of the Sarlacc and just lets his flamethrower just starts torching it. Like,
and that's like, so like, from what little we know of him from the original like Star Wars movies, can't you like see that exact thing happening if it were a continuation of like the 1980 movie? Like, I feel like that's something exactly that Boba Fett would have done from his character in the movies. Like, for so sure. That was sick. I did appreciate that for sure. Escapes the Sarlacc pit, basically passes out, gets his armor taken from the Jawas, and which we, obviously find out in Mandalorian he gets that back, but then gets captured by a bunch of sand people. So, Tusken Raiders, for those Star Wars fans out there. We kind of like wonder how he's getting out of this, because we see him in the first scene he's introduced in The Mandalorian. He is standing there with his Tusken Raider weapon, with a cloak. Like, he looks like he's been living the Tusken Raider life, basically, on Tatooine for a while now. So, it was cool callback to season 2 of The Mandalorian, which will, we see even more of in episode 2, and I'm sure we'll see more of down the line of this show. But basically, I think season 1 ends with, like, he starts kind of developing a relationship with these Tusken Raiders. He starts, like, earning their trust. And, like, I mean, there's been a lot of talk on social media about, like, how, like, I mean, Tusken Raiders, like, we know them from the movies as these kind of annoying people who are raiding villages. They're, like, shooting at pod racers randomly in episode 1. Like, they're kind of a nuisance, right? Like, that's pretty much all they're looked at in the movies. But in this show, we see them as, like, a people group. We see them as indigenous people native to Tatooine, which is kind of cool. Like, we see that they have, they obviously have a language, which we assume that they have a language in the old movies, but, like, again, they're more of a just kind of a little brush by in the story in the movies, so we don't really dwell on that for very much. But, like, yeah, we see a little bit of that in, obviously, episode 2, where Anakin goes and slaughters a whole village of Tusken Raiders. But I digress. So we get to this, and we see them, like, interacting like normal people would, right? Like, and he starts earning their trust, which is a really cool aspect of these couple episodes that we've gotten so far. So, Zane, what did you think of the relationship between Boba and the Tusken Raiders initially, and how that all started developing.
Well, I think that runs back further, and I think it's more of a credit to what Favreau and Filoni are doing, of what you had, because you started getting more of this fleshed out of who the Tusken Raiders are, even back in The Mandalorian. It's not just the crazy taking pot shots at pod racers, and they're like, hey, we like, this is, you know, a native people group to Tatooine.
Right.
Like, let's flesh this out more. Like, yeah, they live in the dunes, like, because that's one of those things you never questioned before. But then you're like, oh, how do people like that just live in the desert? Like, there's nothing out there. So
literally nothing. Like every scene they're in, it's just like flat sand. That's like it.
It's just sand, like sand everywhere, and you're like, oh, okay. And then just to move on from there, and then kind of get that even more fleshed out with Boba Fett. And I think that's gonna play the bigger role because of like the influence they have and teaching the lessons that he ultimately learns from them. Like, I think that's what is going to be the larger picture as the show goes on, of like what you see with him as, you know, he's the what was the word they used, the daimyo, which again taken from ancient, you know, samurai or Japanese culture. I'm pretty sure is where daimyo comes from. But with him taking over, you know, from Bib Fortuna, like, you see how he kind of changes well, I don't know about changing his thinking, but how he had that with the Tusken Raiders of just like, hey, you don't need to just hide in the dunes, like, be proud, like, you're noble people, like, these, you know every sand in this desert, like, let's go take that train thing down, spoiler alert, but let's go do that. And then the other events in number 2, and just as he was talking to them, how he was like, and then when he sent the spice trader out, he was just like, nah, you can you can pay tribute if you want to come through these deserts now. And like, I think that's kind of where you get that idea, and I think that is going to be that springboard of what he's going to go forward, like how he's going to run things now that he's taken over for Jabba. Or, it's going to be, I think it's kind of a bit of a herald to, here's how the things have always been done, but we're going to change it. He kind of brought a new perspective how the Tusken Raiders do things. Now he's changing it how, I don't remember where Jabba's palace is. What's the name of that city? It's not Mos Espa. That sounds right. Maybe. But like gradually changing it. And then like you could even see it too in this, like the last episode when you have the Hutts come in, how like everyone's countenance changed and how the mayor was just like, nah, I'm not going to pay you tribute or whatever. And it's just like, okay, well, this is all the old way of doing stuff. And how I think, I don't remember, was it the Twi'lek at the den or the mayor that was like, no, you do this through fear. And then Boba was just like, nah, that's not how I'm going to operate this. We're going to do it through respect. And
Fennec Shan too, like she's telling Boba like, hey, you need to do this through fear. And he straight up says, we're doing this through earning respect, which, I mean, in Tatooine who knows how long the Hutts have ruled this area. And that's how they've always done it. So nobody knows any differently. So Boba comes in and he's like changing the culture, and everybody, because of it, is not taking him seriously. And, from everything we know about Boba, you don't mess with Boba. So like, I'm assuming we're going to see more of that throughout this season, but man, like, it's cool that we're seeing him take this tone of like, we're going to earn our respect instead of just commanding everybody out of fear, because he absolutely could. He's Boba Fett. He could probably command a lot of fear if he wanted to, but he's taking that different approach, like you're saying. So that's pretty sweet. And he that's exactly what he does with the Tusken Raiders through both episode 1 and 2. He earns their respect. and eventually, like, teaches them how to use the swoop bikes. They do the heist of the train all together, and he leads that whole thing, like plans everything, yeah, and earns their respect. And then they give him this tiny little lizard that goes inside of his head and leads him to. That part was a little weird, honestly. I was like, oh, okay, this is bizarre, but here we are.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so they give him this tiny little lizard. He goes on a quest to find. He's like hallucinating this whole time too, I'm assuming. He finds this random tree branch in the middle of the desert, brings it back, forges his own Tusken Raider weapon. Which, what do they even call those things? Like, I don't even know. I don't think they say it in that.
I've heard what they're called before, but I can't remember.
Gaffy stick. Okay, I'm seeing that right here. Gaffy stick. All right, so he forges his own gaffy stick. He's by the end of episode 2, in the past timeline, he's become a Tusken Raider, basically. Which, I mean, when we saw, like, I guess you could have like probably predicted that just from Mandalorian season 2, but like, did you see this coming at all? Like, these first 2 episodes have been like good, but like surprising to me, like the direction that they're going. I'm like, I did not see that coming, but it's like a welcome, like it's getting good, and I'm fully intrigued by this show.
Right. I think part of that too is just because you're basically making a show off of the namesake. Like, hey, Boba Fett, recognizable name, but going from there, you're like, what is this going to encompass? Like, where is it going to go? And I think that's what kind of adds to some of that, because you're like, what is this going to show? Like, and part of you're like, oh yeah, Boba Fett, you're just going to get some sweet adventures with this awesome bounty hunter, blah, 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 blah. But then you kind of sit back, you're like, oh, we've never actually gotten any stories regarding him. We've never, even what you got from the movies, he just a stone wall of, no emotions. Like, he's never been fleshed out. I mean, the little bit we had from, like, Clone Wars, like, that was when he was a kid. And the little bit from, like, Attack of the Clones again as a kid. Like, we've never seen anything else as he's gotten older.
Right. Well, and then, like, he probably had a total of what, like 5 lines in Empire, or it was Return of the Jedi, wasn't it, that he was in? Like, he had like nothing. He's like a total Star Wars legend without actually having any background, any solid background to his character. And the show is finally giving him canonical background. Like, he's had kind of a fanfic background for a long time, but this is giving him canonical background finally, which is just cool to see. Because I mean, is there any other fandom that loves a character so much with so little screen time as Boba Fett was before Mandalorian season 2 came along? Like, I don't know if there is one, because Boba Fett was on screen a total of maybe like 5 minutes in probably combined Attack of the Clones and Return of the Jedi. Like, dude had 0 screen time at all, pretty much. And there's been a ton of fanfic. There's been a lot of like kind of legends stuff about him. There's been plenty of books written, all like even before Disney came in and said nothing from this point back is canon. Even before that, all the other stuff about Boba was like kind of up in the air canonical. It wasn't like there was a solid backstory. Obviously, everybody knew that he survived the Sarlacc pit, but that was like kind of it. Like, he's kind of been this like Star Wars enigma. And now we're finally learning what's going on or what happened to him, which, I mean, as a Star Wars fan, like, what more can you ask for?
Right, for sure. And I think that's, giving credit to Filoni again. Like, this has so much more of his fingerprints on it, of like, hey, let's take these stories that people might not necessarily expect, or just understanding that there's so much out there in regards to the Star Wars universe, that let's run with some of this other stuff. Let's just see what we can have. There's so many mediums that you can express his story through so many different characters. And yeah, like you said, has there ever been a character in anything else that has garnered so much attention and just, just love from a fan base as Boba Fett? And he had 5 minutes of screen time, like ever, just a universal loved character. I think it's cool that now it's just like, all right, we need to give Boba Fett some attention now. Like, actually, let's build him into this universe. And like, obviously it's not like, oh, young Boba Fett and we're going to see all these adventures, but I think we're getting to the point, maybe not to the degree like what Marvel's doing. Granted, it's all owned by the same people, so whatever. But like, you recognize what you had, all these old beloved characters, but you can kind of build off that and usher in this new era. You can use some of these old characters, still tell some of these stories, but you don't have to just stick with that. You don't have to just keep rehashing the old stuff. Like, you can use this to transition to the new stuff. And that's why, like, yep, we're going to get some attention with Boba Fett, but carrying forward now, like, it's the Mandalorian. And you can use that to establish that and move that to carry over. And, maybe they pull it something like, at the end of this story, maybe we're going towards that Boba, recreates his own bounty hunter guild. And then we have a new generation of bounty hunters come up. Or, like, who knows? Like, but you can use an established character to bring in kind of a new era of Star Wars.
Disney is doing some great things here. We're getting some great fan service in the fact that what we've already mentioned, we're getting backstory to Boba Fett, who is this beloved character who we have zero canonical backstory up until this point. We're also bringing in some of these just fantastic pieces of lore from Star Wars. So episode one specific one that I want to point out is Max Rebo. He's this elephant-looking thing who plays the keyboard in the original trilogy, and they brought him back. He's in the cantina, like, whatever bar that Boba walks into. He's still there. He's playing keyboard still. Dude's a legend.
It's his passion, man.
Passion, right? Exactly. Keyboarding. I heard somebody on TikTok say that Max Rebo in Star Wars lore is this galaxy-renowned musician, and I was like, okay, if that's true, why the heck is he stuck in Tatooine? For one, why is he with in the original trilogy we see him in Django what's his face? Gosh, why can't I think of his name? The slug guy. What's his name? Frank. I can only think of Django and Boba right now for some reason.
Who are you trying to think
The
of?
Hutt. Jabba.
Jabba?
Yeah, we see him in Jabba's palace. So, like, if you're a world-renowned musician, you're not going to be stuck in some, like, back planet, like, palace that nobody goes to. Like, that makes...
Yeah, but if you're world-renowned...
Galaxy-renowned.
Like, galaxy-renowned, like, Jabba's not going to let you leave. Like, Jabba wants the finest too.
Okay, let's just say Jabba makes him stay, okay? Number two, why the heck is he in some random bar in Tatooine long after Jabba's gone? Like, that's the question.
Maybe he just, stayed there and, got hooked on the culture, got himself a mistress.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm sure a planet full of sand dunes and harsh weather conditions is very super appealing to stay at, for sure.
Maybe, like, you're getting real judgy. Maybe he's just trying to write a new album and he's just trying to find that inspiration.
That's true. Maybe Tatooine is giving him the hardship that he needs to write his new, like, hit album that's going to get him out of Tatooine.
Exactly. Maybe he's going through an emo phase. Maybe,
That's a great question.
You don't know.
I mean,
like,
who knows the mind of a musician? And Max Rebo apparently is a galaxy renowned one. So yeah, it was cool to see some of those throwbacks though, and they kind of like had the theme of the cantina music from the original Star Wars music in the background of what they were playing in the bar, which was kind of a cool callback as well. But speaking of characters that we love to see get introduced, we get a really, really big reveal in episode 2. And I know Jarrett especially was super excited about this one. So we see the Hutt brother and sister, like twins. They call them the twins. They come back, and they're basically there to reclaim their territory from Jabba, basically. So Boba shows him down. He's like, this is my territory. They surprisingly say that blood is bad for business, and they agree to leave. But not before we see a character that, I mean, this is another, like, I can't believe Disney is doing this fan service thing. We see this really tough-looking Wookiee come strolling through the crowd. He comes and just stares down Boba. And this one, I did not recognize right away. I was like, there's got to be some significance to this guy. Like, he can't just be some random Wookiee, right? Like, that just strolls up here. And once I, like, kind of looked it up, researched who this guy is, I recognized him because I've read some Star Wars comics. So this is a character from the comics. This guy is Black Kursantan, which is a famous gladiator Wookiee who becomes a bounty hunter, and he is pretty significant in the Star Wars comic books, in Marvel's comic books specifically. So like kind of the canon comic books, if you will, that Disney has been backing and putting out. Like, he's been a pretty significant character in those comic books. So, and I've read a decent amount of those, so I like had seen him and knew who he was. But that was a really cool reveal. Did you know who this was right away when he stepped on screen, Zane? Have you read any of the comics?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
And so no, I like he looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. At first I thought, like, for whatever reason, he was making me think of, like, was he a character in Fallen Order?
Yeah, honestly,
But,
like, he kind of
like, that's what
he had these familiar vibes to him, and I was like,
right. I couldn't place it. Like, I was like, it has a familiarity to it, but like I couldn't place why he looked familiar.
right, exactly. So he comes on, and I mean, this dude fought his way out of a gladiator, like, arena scenario type of thing in the comics. Like, he's no joke. He's one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, commonly employed by Darth Vader and Jabba the Hutt in the comics. So like, this dude is legit. So he comes up, has a stare down with Boba. I'm assuming we're gonna get a showdown, later in the show, which is gonna be sick. But that was a really cool, callback to the comics, which we really haven't seen a lot of references to. Like, they've kind of snuck in little Easter eggs here and there, but like, up until this point, Star Wars comics really haven't been like, I will say, since the Marvel took the Star Wars comics over, if you start that run, I think it starts in like, 2014 and 2015 or something. If you read from then on, like, the Star Wars comics are really, really good, actually. There's some really iconic scenes. One specifically, Zane, that I know you've pointed out. There's this page where Darth Vader is, like, in a battlefield, and he's literally surrounded by hundreds, possibly thousands of soldiers. And some dude literally shouts at him, like, dude, you're surrounded, like, give up. And he's like, the only thing I'm surrounded by is dead men. And he lights up his lightsaber, and that's like the most badass
Such
Darth
a
Vader
cool
moment
panel.
possibly in Darth Vader
Ugh.
history. Like, that panel is iconic, like, so cool. So these comics are actually legit. Make sure you go check those out. But that was really cool that they had this reference to the comics, and hopefully we keep seeing more. and references to, again, other shows, Clone Wars, Rebels. And I didn't look this up before this podcast, but it would be really interesting to see where the timeline is on all of this, because this has got to be like after Rebels, right? Because Rebels happens pretty much right after, happens like right before the Rebel Resistance forms, right? So this is
yes,
and this happens. The Mandalorian happens like a few years after the events of the original trilogy. So it's a pretty significant amount of time there, which actually begs the question, like, how the heck old is Boba Fett? That's a great question. How long did he sit there on Tatooine looking for his armor from the Jawas that stole them?
Old.
He's old. And did you notice, though, Zane, that like Tamira Morrison looks way better in this than he did in The Mandalorian? Like, dude had a gut in Mandalorian.
Well, like, he probably actually had time to like work out and get
I'm
more
sure
in shape,
they called him up for The Mandalorian, like, dude, do you want to make a cameo, like a guest appearance in this show? And he's like, yeah, sweet, let's do it. And he hadn't been working out for decades probably, so he had a little bit of a belly, which looked a little funky with the Boba Fett armor. But
nah, I was all about it. Made him look fierce.
fierce. Dad bod Boba Fett is fierce, according to Zane.
Looks like Bartolo Colon out there, man. Let's go.
Bartolo Colon. That's a great reference. Great reference, Zane. Proud of you. So anyways, yeah, like some awesome potential that we see in these first 2 episodes of Boba Fett. And we're looking forward to the rest of the season. Are there any things that you didn't like about these first 2 seasons or those first 2 episodes, Zane?
The sand.
Yes. It's everywhere.
It's coarse. It's irritating.
It's irritating. It's everywhere. It's nobody likes the sand. Agreed. That's a great point, Zane. Great point. Okay, anything else besides the sand that you did not like about these episodes? Oh gosh.
No, like it's been good. Like it's another one of those shows you kind of go in, you're like, I'm not sure what to expect, and everything we've gotten so far has been pleasantly surprising, and like let's just keep the story going. Like I don't think it was one of those shows that you weren't placing a ton of expectation on it, but like so far, like it's setting the bar high, but you kind of knew it was doing that from what you had with The Mandalorian. So I think it's just gonna take that in stride and keep going with it.
I'm totally with you there. Like I came into this kind of like apprehensive, like why are they substituting this for The Mandalorian? Everybody loves The Mandalorian type of thing. But the fact that we're getting this much background on this character, that we have so much like head lore on, and we're finally putting some legit like tracks and like canon behind this character, I absolutely love that. And I kind of already mentioned before, like it's kind of hard to see at this point like where they're heading right now, but we're only 2 episodes in, so like obviously there's plenty of time for that to be corrected, but like I'm still not like completely all in on this show. Like I love the show. I think it's amazing. I just am really like curious as to where they're heading with it. And I want them to go somewhere good. I don't want them to just kind of like show us lore and that's it.
Well, I don't think that's what we're going to get. I don't think it's going to be just lore. I think they're laying that framework and establishing stuff to kind of build into this next series of things. Because like what we had, we had Ahsoka, what we got from season 2 Mandalorian. We know Thrawn exists. So like maybe that's where we go for, like Boba gets, establishes the guild. and then crosses back over with the Mandalorian, and then we know we're gonna get Ezra Bridger back in, so we know we're getting Sabine Wren. So it's now, do we get bounty hunters then going after Thrawn? Like, I'm all for it.
I mean, there's a crap ton of stuff that we have yet to see through Ahsoka, like you said, through Obi-Wan, which is also going to take place on Tatooine. So that's another. Do you think we get like a post-credit scene at the end of the show that has to do with Obi-Wan because of it taking place on Tatooine?
It's going to be something. It's either going to be connected with Obi-Wan. We're going to get Ahsoka, the Mandalorian. Like, it's going to connect into something that we have, right. I feel like. Because I think it's all going to run forward from here on out.
Absolutely.
Like, the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, like, just the way Filoni and Favreau have been running things. Like, there's no way they're going to give us a show that's not connected somehow. Like, it's all tying in.
These guys, Filoni and Favreau, they know Star Wars. And they know what Star Wars fans want, and they're really, really, really playing into that with these, both The Mandalorian, which they meant as an original show, which it is, but they still put a ton of those Easter eggs in there, and this show, which is just chock full of Star Wars lore so far in these first 2 episodes. Like, man, they know what the fans want. So that's what makes me excited for this show. Like, we're going to get some good stuff that's going to make us, like, literally, like, I feel like if I see Cad Bane in live action, I'm going to stand up and probably cheer at that point.
Oh, 100%.
It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. So, lots of good things to look forward to with Book of Boba Fett. So, cautiously optimistic is how I would put I know I'm going to be pleased with the results of this show. I just hope that this show isn't a complete, like, nostalgia and lore. Like, that's the only reason they did this show. Like, I want it to play into the whole direction that they're going, basically, is how I'm kind of, like, wanting it to play. So that's what I'll say. I'm a little bit more than cautiously optimistic. I feel like that's a little too reserved. So, but there's going to be some amazing things happening with the show. So make sure you check that out. Disney Plus, episodes releasing weekly on Wednesday, Tuesday nights, Wednesday mornings.
Oh, Wednesday morning at like
Zane
2
and I
a.m.
are watching these episodes at 2 a.m. usually when they drop. So,
pretty darn close.
It's some good stuff. So make sure you check that out. So Zane, we've got a couple more segments left that we're going to do for today. The first one is one that we haven't done for a while, which is Hot and Snot.
Hot or snot?
So Hot and Snot is a segment that we usually kind of just give a couple things that we've been into lately, whether we like it or not. So if we like it, it gets on our hot list. If we don't, it's on our snot list. So, Zane, why don't you hit us up with your hot or snot?
Put a ton of time and attention into researching these, obviously. My hot, well, we know Amazon's working on the whole Lord of the Rings series, which is cool.
Can't wait.
But I think it's completely overshadowing that Amazon is making a Fallout TV series.
I didn't even know that. So, yeah.
That is about set to go into production. So I have that as on my hot because, it totally gets overshadowed.
So is that becoming 2023 then? If it's just going into production right now?
It must be 2023 because it's just going into production.
I know, like, tracking on TV shows ends up being a lot faster than movies, I feel like. So it potentially could be... I mean, if they start soon,
maybe
it could
late
be late 2022 or early 2023. Right.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Dang.
I mean, could be.
All right.
But that was one of those things I was like, well, that'd be cool because I feel like that could actually kind of work as a TV show because there's just so much you can do with that. Yeah, it's another post-apocalyptic thing, but I think there's enough lore and universe established that you could make some cool stuff and obviously, get some dude running around in the Fallout suit and just killing, death claws. Like, I'm all about it. And all I got for my snot is I don't know, what was it, last month? They found some fossilized dinosaur egg, and I'm like, can we just stop? Like, we've all seen Jurassic Park. Like, I get it. It's really cool. We're like, we're digging up fossils, but just put it back.
It's 2020. Please. We've already been through a pandemic.
It's 2020. It's 2022.
Oh gosh.
You know, I don't need a situation of like, oh man, we're gonna mask up when we step outside, but
there's also potential that.
But there's also velociraptors.
Velociraptor.
So
absolutely, yeah.
You're
gonna be wearing that mask while running from the velociraptor. It's rough. It's a rough situation,
right?
For sure.
let's just not. Please, let's not.
Come on, just do better. Scientists of the world, think about this a little bit. Do better. All right, is that all you got, Zane, for your hot stuff?
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, I've only got a couple things as well. So for my hot, I'm going to say this the way that God intended it and not as my Midwestern accent, Encanto. It's a movie that dropped on, well, actually it came out in theaters about a month ago and then finally dropped in Disney Plus, I believe, about 2 weeks ago or something. Great film. I would say that the soundtrack is 100 times better than the movie. I like the movie. The movie's cool. But the soundtrack is amazing. Another Lin-Manuel Miranda genius soundtrack. The dude cannot do any wrong in my eyes. I love everything that he's doing. I'm literally like 2 or 3 nights at work this week found myself listening to the soundtrack while I was charting or doing other stuff at work. So make sure you check that out on Disney Plus. Soundtrack is amazing. Movie's good too. So watch the movie and then add it to your iTunes or Spotify playlist or whatever. So great stuff. On my snot list, I just have one thing as well, and that is Cherry. So this is a movie on Apple TV Plus with Tom Holland actually as the main character, and this is directed by the Russo brothers, which kind of got my attention. It's been out for a couple months now. Like it's not like new, but I subscribed to Apple TV Plus, so I was trying to watch more stuff on there, and I watched it, and I'll give it props because the cinematography and just everything, it's very well produced. Which everything on Apple TV that I've watched is an original Apple TV production has been. Everything is very well produced. But this show, so Tom Holland is this basically kid who just kind of has a rough home life through as a teenager. He grows up and, he goes into the army, has a rough time in the army, and then he comes back and has a rough time at home, ends up becoming addicted to drugs. And really there's just, I don't know, there's no substance to this movie. I didn't really know what point it was trying to make. It was again, well produced. Tom Holland does a great job acting as this serious. It was kind of weird to see Tom Holland in this serious role. And I don't know, he did a great job, but the movie itself, it was a one-time watch. I probably will never go back to this. So I'd give it a 3 out of 6. Oh, you know what? We haven't even rated anything on the show yet. So we'll go ahead and plug the rating bumper. This is how we rate things on the Infinity Bros podcast right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
So yeah, it was a 3 out of 6. It was fine. It wasn't a bad watch by any means. If you're on Apple TV Plus and you have and it's a long movie too. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you have that long to burn, sure, check it out. But I wouldn't say set time out of your schedule to go watch it. It just, I don't know. It just seemed like there wasn't really a point to the movie. It kind of just made me depressed because I saw a lot of addiction and terrible things happening in the movie. So just kind of, made me a little depressed. So yeah, I'm snotting that one. It wasn't completely awful, but it wasn't, it didn't brighten up my week at all. So So there you go. That's our hot and snot. So because we didn't mention that before, Zane, what would you give the first 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett? What would you rate them?
Great question. I'm thinking like 5 apiece.
Yeah, I think that's
Five
I'm
for
on the
each?
same thought wave there. I think 5 out of 6 for both episodes 1 and 2. Like solid, really good. I struggle. I guess I wouldn't call them like mind blowing, right? Like we kind of expected everything that was going to happen, but it was still like amazing to see it.
It's good to see it, but I think a lot of it too is just it's you're through 2 episodes, but part of it, yeah, it's just kind of it's building to something, but it's kind of slowly building. Like it's had action, but it's not a ton of action.
Well, and that's like
we kind of knew that's what we were going to get.
That's the complaint that we've had with a lot of those Marvel shows is that like they're just way too short. Like we just need more character development. We need more time with the, relationships in those shows to develop them. So if they're taking it slow, so be it. I'm okay with that. So yeah, that's what I'd stand on that. 5 out of 6. All right, so we'll move into our last segment of the podcast, our top 6.
We're going in 3, 2, 1. You're entering the top 5 on the Infinity Bros podcast. Starting now.
So our top 6 is a water cooler discussion of. It's usually a list of just random things that we come up with before the show starts, and today we are coming up with the top 6 list of the things that we're most excited for in 2022, whether that be video games, movies, TV shows, media, any type of media, nerdy stuff that we're excited for in 2022. So Zane, why don't you go ahead list off your whole list. We'll just go you first, and then I'll end us, and then we'll get out of here.
All right. Number 6, we're finally supposed to get. They're supposed to start filming Blade.
Oh,
and I'm
yes.
very excited. Like, yeah, that's not coming out till 2023 or whatever.
Okay.
But I'm just like,
here's a big rumor, like nothing confirmed, but I've heard that Blade is actually supposed to appear in the Moon Knight series that is going to be dropping this year. So
I've heard that as well, and I'm all about it.
Would be amazing. Whew, man.
Right.
That would be wild.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. So I'm like, just anything Blade. Yep, let's.
Zane's all about Blade.
Give it to me.
All right.
Let's see. Number 5. I guess I don't know if it should count as excited. Maybe it's part scared, whatever, but I turned 30 this year and I don't know how to feel about it.
I love that you put that in your list.
I'm just like,
dude,
I guess I'm just trying to hype myself about it, I guess.
Isn't it weird to think? Okay, here's the thing that I think about every time I think of, because I turned 30 this past year in August. So here's the thing that I think about. I watch an NFL football game, and like 75% of the players on the field are younger than me. That's when I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm old. Like, this is wild. These guys are all younger than me. That's crazy. And they're massive. They're huge. They're fast. They're strong. And here I am, like, sitting in my basement, like, we're having a podcast together about, like, nerdy stuff. Wild stuff.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just trying to stay optimistic about it, but my attitude about that could change.
All right.
Keep burning through these. My number 4 is video game coming out called Forspoken. It looks very cool. It's going to be a PS5 exclusive. I think it's a timed exclusive. But if you haven't seen anything about that, check that out. It looks gorgeous. It looks very interesting. So I'm excited about that. Number 3, obviously, Moon Knight. I mean, gotta keep going with the Marvel stuff. Like, let's go. Number 2, what we were talking about earlier, Midnight Suns. Again, some people were hating on the whole, it's going to be that card turn-based stuff. I'm like, nah, give me a Marvel game that's like XCOM.
Absolutely.
Like, that's perfect. It's
Yes.
exactly the real-time strategy. Like, yes, that's... I will play the crap out of that game.
Absolutely.
And then my number one, again, dipping in the well of games, because one of my all-time favorite game series, we're getting God of War Ragnarok. God of War is probably still my number one all-time favorite game. And just getting the sequel to that. So that's definitely the biggest thing I'm looking forward to this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, that looks sick. I've played like most of the God of War, I think it's 2018 version, PS4, and that game is incredible. Awesome game. So that's a cool thing to be looking forward to for sure. So I'll go with my list here. Number 6, we have a Lord of the Rings TV series from Amazon coming out later this year. It's dropping in 2022, they've announced, and I mentioned this before the podcast started, saying we don't have a title for this series yet. We don't know anything about it really, which is kind of weird to think that it's dropping in 2020 when you don't know anything about it yet. All we know that it's like a prequel series, takes place like potentially thousands of years before the events of Lord of the Rings. And I love Lord of the Rings. Like, that's one of my favorite fantasy like worlds. So I'm hyped for anything Lord of the Rings. Amazon does a great job with their shows, so I'm excited for it either way. A lot of weird things we've heard about the show. Like, we've heard that it's going to be like rated like TVMA for potential like nudity, and I'm like, I don't know what that's about, but it's Lord of the Rings, so I hope they do it tastefully. But that's a weird thing about it. But I'm excited for this series. I'm going to watch it either way, regardless of what comes out about it. It's going to be sick. So, number 5 is the Batman. That's going to be dropping this year. This is not high on my list because it's Batman. We've had how many movies of Batman before this? So many movies, like a ton of them. So it's still cool. I love Batman. He's a great character. Robert Pattinson looks awesome. We're finally getting the Riddler in a modern live action movie, which is going to be awesome. I know, Zane, you're like a huge Riddler fan in Batman villains. I think that's going to be sick. So pumped for this, but it's been done. It'll do well. It'll be awesome. I'm excited for it. My number 4 is Midnight Suns as well, Zane. Me and you, this might be like our thing. This would absolutely not be on anybody else in the Infinity Bros list. Maybe be on like Jarrett's honorable mentions. Like, I don't even think it would be on his list, but like, we're strategy guys. We love the strategy, like mind games, and this game, man, I'm just pumped for this. This is going to be so cool to finally get like a turn-based strategy game in a superhero vein. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait for it. Number 3 is also Moon Knight. This looks fantastic. I have not read many Moon Knight comics, but what I have read and what I've heard about this character is completely bonkers, off the wall. I'm honestly shocked that this is dropping on Disney Plus, because I'm expecting this series to just get super wild. So this is going to be wild. I'm super excited for it, to see how this character is going to be integrated into the mostly like tame MCU. To my nursing stuff.
Work on the brain.
But the MCU is like, it's pretty chill. It's pretty mild right now. Like, we have some mystical stuff in there with Doctor Strange and his kind of surrounding characters, but Moon Knight is gonna just elevate the wildness in the MCU, I feel like. So that's gonna be an awesome show. Number 2 is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, we've been waiting for this Kenobi show, I feel like, for like years. It's been so long. And with the just, they're knocking these Star Wars live action series out of the park with Mandalorian and Boba Fett so far. I am just super hyped for this show. And I'm honestly shocked we haven't gotten a trailer at this point. Like, I thought they were going to drop a full trailer last year when they had the Disney Plus Day reveals, and they only gave us like some behind the scenes random crap like Ewan McGregor talking, and we saw like a shot of Hayden Christensen doing some lightsaber training, which is sweet. Like, I'm excited about that, but like, I wanted a trailer. I wanted to see like something from Kenobi, and I'm honestly like, I can't be mad because I've been on the train of like, trailers are revealing way too much these days, and I want to be like completely shocked and surprised by this show. So this is a series that I am like super duper hyped for, and like all these other Star Wars shows have been awesome, but like we haven't gotten a solid good lightsaber fight since the prequels. Like, let's be honest, like there was no good real lightsaber fights in the sequel series. Like, whatever you think about the sequel series, there weren't any good lightsaber fights in those shows. So
that's very sexist.
like, there were like, it was good action scenes, but there weren't good lightsaber fights. Like, come on, they were like, every lightsaber fight you see in the sequels, they're literally just like hitting each other's lightsabers, and that's it. Like, that's all they do. So like, I mean, it comes nowhere near Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen and Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, or the Duel of the Fates in Phantom Menace. Like, nothing anywhere close to those lightsaber fights. So I'm hoping for one super solid lightsaber fight. Crossing my fingers that it's going to be Obi-Wan and Darth Vader with Hayden Christensen like coming back for this show. Like, that would be a mind-blowing if we get a lightsaber fight between those two. That would be awesome. Just like a basically rematch of Revenge of the Sith. Like, that would be fantastic. So this show I'm very excited for. My number one, though, however, to nobody's surprise, is Across the Spider-Verse. This show is dropping towards the end of 2022. Into the Spider-Verse is my number one movie of all time. Not even superhero movies, like my number one movie of all time. I absolutely love Into the Spider-Verse. I think it's the best piece of media ever made, and I cannot wait for Spider-Man 2099, Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara. Like, just, oh man, this show is going to be fantastic. I cannot wait for it. I'm sure I'll be talking about it probably all year on the Infinity Bros podcast leading up to it. So we'll do a special spoiler cast when it finally drops at some point, and be able to release all that pent up hype that I've had for it all year. But man, this is going to be fantastic. Cannot wait for Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. We're getting another part to Across the Spider-Verse. So man, it's going to be fantastic. So that's my top 6 list. Zane, I really appreciate your list as well, because I feel like you're the gaming guy on the Infinity Bros podcast. We need to have some of those gaming takes, and a little bit. I can't wait again to get you streaming in 2022. It's gonna be fantastic.
We'll see what happens.
Zane, thank you so much for joining me on this 101th episode, 101 of the Infinity Bros podcast. Well, Infinity Bros Universe, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your podcast experience. Whether you are at home listening, or you're on your way to work, or you're at work, thank you so much for hanging out with us, the Infinity Bros, through our podcast, through our website, theinfinitybros.com, through our Discord, through our Twitch stream. We thank you so much for everything that you do to be a part of the Infinity Bros universe. We love you 3000. Have an amazing day and week wherever you are, and we will see you next time in the Infinity Bros podcast. We love you 3000.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.